All right, good morning, folks. My name is Denny LeCompte. I'm the Senior Vice President of Product Strategy for SolarWinds.
And my name is Joel Dolisi, and I'm the CTO and CIO for SolarWinds.
So just to start with, how many of you are familiar with SolarWinds? Okay, how many of you have used the products? Okay, so most of you. So that simplifies things a fair bit. So let me give you just kind of an overview of who we think we are, which hopefully aligns with who you think we are. So how do we, what is our portfolio, and sort of how do we position, ourselves in the market? Like why do we think people should come to SolarWinds versus anyone else? Portfolio, we started the company really as a network management company. The founder originally built the engineer's tool set, which has tens of thousands of users. From that, he then sort of went into what we called for a long time Orion, Network Performance Monitor, which was just a really nice SNMP-based monitoring solution. If the device had SNMP, it could go monitor something on it. And it was dirt cheap and really good and very simple. And then it just sort of took off like wildfire. I think Joel and I entered the picture right around 2006 when the company stopped being like a little family-run company, brought in professional management, and really tried to take this thing the founder had built that was so nice and just make it bigger and make more of it. So over the last few years, what we've done is we've expanded first the network management portfolio. So we started really with just Network Performance Monitor. We've expanded that a lot, and I'll show you guys a demo. We just released the latest version this week. Then we added a NetFlow traffic analyzer product, followed by a voice over IP product, which we still have, which uses Cisco's IPSLA as well as native Cisco records, and we're working on adding Avaya to it. We do IP address management. I skipped network configuration management. Our network configuration management product, I think when I started, there were several kind of standalone config management products on the market, and they've sort of all either been sucked into very large portfolios where you kind of have to buy a huge solution, or there's nothing. In fact, we have two. We have the Network Configuration Manager, and then we have a little one, the Kiwi CAD tools, which if you are sort of pressed for dollars, it doesn't do nearly as much, but it will get the job done. We also introduced then User Device Tracker, which is sort of a port management product, which is sort of a complement to the IP Address Manager. Who am I forgetting on the network side? We went on a little acquisition spree last year. And the reason for that is, we have a lot of customers, they ask us for a lot of things, and we just couldn't build them all fast enough. And when you build a 1.0 product, well, look, it can be nice, but often it'll take several years before it really meets a lot of people's needs. So what we have done in our acquisition strategy is go out, look at products, and in fact, almost every company we've bought has sort of the same profile. It's a little family-run company. They've engineered the heck out of a product, so that's a really nice product. They don't know so much about marketing or sales, so the product is underperforming. And their basic belief for a lot of small companies, if you just make the product better, even though no one knows about it, it will sell more. Well, it turns out you do have to spend some money on marketing. It's sort of a necessary evil. So that what we do is we go to acquire their product and put it into our attach our brand to it, usually double or triple the size of their engineering team, because often, one or two people, make it a bigger engineering team, invest in it and market it. And so what we end up with then is, instead of a 1.0 product in the first year, we end up with, like a 5.0 product that's very mature and does a lot of what customers need. So that's the network side. We also have entered systems management market. I'll sort of gloss over that because you guys are all sort of live and breathe on the network side. But we do server and application monitoring, which is all of this stuff, and I'll show you when we get to the demo that it really is all on a common platform. We do server and application monitoring, and that's not sort of a New Relic top-down, transaction tracing kind of product. It is, we start with the hardware monitoring, go up the stack, we monitor the OS, we monitor, when we say apps, it's more things like databases, directories, web servers, right? So it's more infrastructure kind of stuff. So that's a sort of the companion product to our flagship NPM solution. We have a virtualization management product that goes with that, and in fact, we acquired that, and we are sort of in the process of tightly integrating it. We also do storage management. I mean, one of the trends we see, and part of the reason we've bought all this stuff is it doesn't seem like you can just do a pure network management anymore, right? There's a lot to be done there, but the world is much more application-centric than it was before. And to the extent that you see vendors now selling sort of like Cisco selling something that's got the network, the storage, the virtualization layer, everything sort of tied into really even one device. We think that we need a solution or a set of solutions that are going to sort of also tie together. So that's, I'm not going to go into a lot of details. The systems products, there's a wide range of them. We've also do help desk. So what ties all these together for us? Like why, if you come to buy a SolarWinds product, what is different about SolarWinds than about anybody else? We sort of divide the world into two big groups of competitors. One, or sort of the big four, the Tivoli, CA, BMC, those guys who have done enterprise IT management for decades. And they do it in a very specific way. They try and have the most features. They follow the trends, the latest and greatest. They claim to have it. They really sell from the top down. So they go to your CIO. They say, look, I've got the most bullet points. They sell them a very nice story. And then, there might be a bake-off. The whole process takes a long time. But what we've seen is often the person who actually does network management or any kind of IT management is saddled with a product. Like they inherited it, it comes from on high, and there it is. Maybe it's good, maybe it's easy, maybe they like it. It really doesn't matter. Their opinion is not that important. So we look at those guys and don't make a lot of distinction between them, whether it's CA or Tivoli or B. They're all the same in a lot of ways. Then there's the really little guys who they're small, very small companies. They have products that are actually usually much easier to use. They're simple, but they don't have a lot of functionality. They often don't scale. So that there's these guys up the top, guys down at the bottom, and what SolarWinds has tried to do for the last 10 years is sort of drive right through the middle of that. So we tend to try and have most of the features of the big guys. We explicitly do not try to have all of their features, because if you try and have all of their features, you're going to end up with all of their weaknesses. I mean, one of the reasons, like how do the big guys end up being as sort of convoluted and unusable as they often are? Well, it's part of the sales process, right? Because there's a expensive sales guy, they're talking to a C-level executive. In order to make the deal, somebody says, I've got to have this special feature. And so the sales guy goes back to the product team at Tivoli or CA and says, hey, I can't make this deal unless you give me this feature. No, I know nobody else in the world wants this feature. Nevertheless, you got to give it to me. And the product manager's like, usually stuck. I've been that product manager. You're like, well, the sales guy claims it's $1 million deal. Either give him the feature he wants or I'm going to get in trouble. So it never ends up being actually $1 million. It ends up being some small fraction of that. But you've now added this weird thing that we often refer to it as, you got a customer, they've got 3 arms. And so what they want is to add an arm. You're selling sweaters. They want a third arm in the sweater. So you now are selling 3-arm sweaters because you don't just add it for them. You add it. Now it's there. It's sort of useless for everybody else. So you talk to any product manager at any enterprise company, and they can tell you, oh, that feature is from such and such a deal, and that feature is from this deal, right? You've got a lot of stuff that's general, but there's a lot of stuff that's deal-driven. One of the things that we don't do is that. Because if you try and have all the features, so we try to have 80% of the features. We try to, if you think about a bell curve, what we try to do is go right at the middle of the bell curve, the fat part, We don't go on the tail, because if you go to the biggest companies in the world, they have peculiar problems, right? If you've gotten to be a $20 billion company, you have a lot of people, your IT setup is probably pretty unique. You can't really be unique, pretty unique. You either are or you aren't. It's unique, and it's probably complicated. And on the low end, really tiny business have unique problems as well, but again, we're not trying to address the very low end. So it's sort of the majority in the middle that we're trying to serve. The way we try to get that right is that we have a lot of product managers, and product managers try to stay very close to customers. This is not staying very close to sales guys. You don't ask sales guys what they want. You go talk to IT people. If you guys are familiar with us, you're probably familiar with thwack.com, which is what we branded our community site. It's a very active community site. Our customers post there a lot. Even more lurk there every day, spend a lot of time on Thwack. We have actually a couple of the product managers on our PM team come from Thwack. Basically, they spent so much time doing it that we convinced them that they should do it for money, because they're spending too much time with us. Like, really, you're all about us. You might as well just move to Austin and be a PM, because they just understood the product so well. So we've got PMs who are, a lot of them are ex-IT guys, but they spend all their time talking on the forum, talking on email, talking on the phone. Like, if you're a product manager and you haven't talked to a couple of customers every day, you're in trouble. Like, if we would say you're not doing your job. And so you really want to figure out what is it that you want to understand their problems. Not necessarily what people are saying, hey, I need these 3 features, but just trying to understand what are the things that are most important to your typical customer, right? So that's, and it's the massive customers. It's not, hey, we're going to build this for our biggest customer. That's not a conversation that happens at SolarWinds. We don't really have biggest customers. We have, what do the most customers want? And I've had the CEOs say to me many times, look, we're not going to do that even if it's $1 million deal unless you tell me everybody else also wants that. So we've walked away from that again and again. So I would say that's really a unique approach to the market, to the way we do IT management. And one of the side effects of it is we don't tend to do usually the most bleeding edge stuff. Because if you're going for the fat part of the bell curve, well, the fat part is not where, it's not where the test, I always refer to sort of the test pilots, guys who are like, this is the newest technology, it's the bits are still hot, well, I'm going to go do that. Well, that's usually not a lot of them. The problems are not well understood. So we don't really go after that. We often wait until the dust settles a bit. People understand the problem really well, and they also know, well, this is the part that matters. If you do a startup to go chase some new technology, sometimes it turns out you solve a problem that you thought people would have, but no one actually cares about. And they all kind of go over here. So we tend to hang back. We would be a fast follower, even a moderately paced follower. We do not think of ourselves as the guy who's going to go and do the latest, greatest thing every time. But we will talk to you actually about VMware's announcement last week. We do think that is really interesting. We may not be the first to go after that, but we think it's super important and that we're going to have to address it because it's going to change everything quite a bit. Let me just pause. Do you guys have any questions?
No.
Okay. So that's sort of the portfolio, the philosophy, kind of roadmap. Where does SolarWinds think it's good? Where do we think we're going, right? So we did go on a sort of buying binge for a couple of years. We acquired a lot of products so that we could have a very rich portfolio. What we're doing now, the process is to integrate. And we're doing it slowly because what we don't want to end up with is what we call Frankenware, where you can sort of see these two things do not belong together, but sort of got bolts in the neck sticking out and the skin's different color and you can see the stitches. That's not what we want. It takes longer to do it right, but when we are doing the integration, we will take several releases. So we bought a company called Hyper9. They do virtualization management. We are integrating that into the platform. The first integrated version came out this summer, so it's somewhat integrated. It will be probably another 1.5 years before it feels like it's perfectly native. We're doing the same thing with our storage product. and that'll probably be out sometime next year, because we do see that if you have a common platform, a common UI, common alerts, common reports, everything is really shared, you can start to answer those really tricky, IT problems where you say, okay, what's causing some performance issue? And it's usually the performance issues, because outages are easier to figure out, like that broke. But when stuff is just slow, that's what users are always telling us. That's really hard to diagnose. And it's often hard to figure out. Is it the network? Is it storage? Is it the hypervisor? Is it hardware? Where is the bottleneck? And so we want that all on a common platform. But at the same time, the philosophy is we don't want to become that which we sort of exist in opposition to. We've always said we don't want to be that giant platform that says, look, we will solve your problems. All you got to do is buy everything we have. Well, that kind of sucks, right? That's not who we want to be. We want people to be able to always buy one product. This solves I have a narrow need, I'm going to buy this product. It's not going to cost very much. It's going to be really simple to use, and you can still do that. But if you like it, and you buy some other products, we want those to be very, very tightly integrated. So that's the challenge. That's sort of the design challenge that we're struggling with as we go forward, to make sure that they are still separable, but when you put them together, they're really, really tightly integrated. So that's kind of the one other piece I didn't talk about. I'm not sure how much it applies to you all, but we do think it's a major trend in the industry, and that's the managed service provider trend. If you make the mistake of reading Gartner or Forrester or any of the really big analysts, and you read about us, what you will find, we find it frustrating to talk to them, because they want us to be CA or Tivoli, and they try and put us in that box. And so we often end up arguing with them, because they tell us how the world is, and they're like, well, that's how your world is if you're only talking to the Fortune 500. But if you're talking to the other tens of thousands of businesses that we deal with every day, the world is often very different. And so, oh shoot, I got so caught up in criticizing Gartner that I can't remember why I started it. This is always a good time.
Well,
MSPs.
those analysts are often
yes.
documenting history. They're not talking about the future, they're talking about the past.
Yeah, and they're predicting.
They're not predicting anything, they're documenting what exists. Because they go out and talk to people and say, what are you doing? And then they write down what's being done. They're not talking about where it's going.
So
yeah.
they're talking, but the challenge we have is they're talking to a very small set of people. And they're talking to only the largest enterprises. And so that if you don't sell to those guys, they're like, well, you don't have what people need. Well, like, I don't know. I got 20,000 customers on this product. Somebody must need what we're selling. And they're telling us we're not meeting the needs, and they're comparing us to somebody who has 500 customers. So that's the disconnect. That's often
your customers aren't buying those reports either.
Our customers don't tend to subscribe to Gartner
or any of the analysts.
No, they're more likely to go and read you guys, to be honest, right? They're going to go look at bloggers. They're going to go look on forums. Certainly our customers are not believers in authority. They're not believers in, sort of official reviews. What they want is the straight dope from somebody who's like them. And so that we do as much as we can to try and, communicate our stuff in those formats. But it really does need to come from people that's not us, because they also don't trust us. I mean, look, if you ask me if my product's good, of course I'm going to say it's good. The proof is what does somebody else say? Do they also, can you get a quorum of people together that go, yes, it's not perfect, but it's good in all these many ways. So, but one of the real trends that you see is small business. Like people that was why I brought up Gartner. People call us, Gartner likes to say we sell to small businesses, and we really don't. Because a small business is often, it's like 100 people or less, and they don't really have a lot of IT. They might have one guy. But the trend we have observed, and that does seem to be a pretty big deal over the long term, is small businesses are just foregoing an IT department altogether. They are just outsourcing it to a managed service provider and letting them do it instead. And if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. If I have a small business, I could hire an IT guy and try and hope that he or she is just awesome at everything, which is unlikely. They'll be overworked, or I might not even have enough work for a full-time IT person. Or I could basically, contract with an MSP and timeshare a pretty good IT department, because that's the way that I like to think about it, is you're just buying a share of this, hopefully really good IT department. And so one of the things we did back in May is we bought a company called Enable. Enable's been around for a long time, and they are a remote monitoring management is how that, it's RMM, that's how that whole space is referred to. It's Kaseya, Enable, Level Platforms, GFI Max, a company called LabTech. They all kind of serve, they're sort of arms dealers to the MSPs, right? We're going to give you the tools you guys need. And there is overlap. Like when we talk to the technical people at the MSPs, it's not like they've only ever done MSPs. They're often, oh, I was doing corporate IT, I took this job at this managed service provider, and now they're selling, now they're using a tool like Enable. So we bought Enable because we do think that's growing. When we look at it, the MSP market is growing. Our classic products are not really built for MSPs. They're not, the MSP products tend to be shallower in depth in terms of functionality, but very, very broad. The MSPs, what they're looking for is a one-stop shop. They want somebody to give them monitoring, management, desktop, antivirus, backup, like all of that. They just want to go to one provider and say, give me the tools I need, and I'm going to resell your stuff to my little end customers and get that done. So we think that's important. So we think that's growing faster than corporate IT. Because I think partly when you see the trend with SaaS, where everybody's doing software as a service, you can get a lot bigger than you used to before you need much IT. And so people get to that point, and now they're switching over to this managed service provider model. So we see them as very distinct. IT isn't going anywhere. It's certainly, the nature of it's changing, and even larger companies are now outsourcing parts of what they do. Like if you don't have anybody who really knows security, but it's important, you might outsource to a managed security provider. So that's one of the other trends that we've seen, and that's sort of why we bought Enable earlier this year.